Today, we're talking about character agency. What, were you expecting a better intro? You know what? Why don't you come up with a better intro on your own? Character agency is one of the most important parts of creating realistic, interesting, and compelling characters. It's also difficult to make sure you've done it right. Characters that lack agency are difficult to get invested in because they lack the depth and personality that draw readers in. When you have a story with characters that seem like they only exist to make the plot happen, that's usually, but not always, a problem with character agency. If you want readers to become invested in your story and your characters, then your characters need to have agency. So let's talk about what character agency is, what happens when you don't have enough of it, and how to know if you have enough of it. At its core, character agency relates to how much impact your characters have on the events of the story, their ability to make their own decisions, and how much of their own motivations and goals affect their actions. Why don't we break down those 3 points one by one? See, I have control over the video, so I get to decide these things, so that's agency. An active, well-agencied character is going to drive the events of the story forward. They will make the events of the plot happen rather than just waiting around for them to happen. The actions of such a character have a major impact on the plot, either positive or negative, and short of those actions occurring, the plot would have happened in a different way, or not at all. In order for a character's actions to have a major impact, they need to be able to decide what actions to take. A character who can make their own decisions has their own version of right and wrong and their own way to assess the pros and cons of a given course of action is going to seem more active and also have more agency. If a character is only pursuing a certain set of actions because the plot needs them to do it, then that's a problem. The characters should be choosing to pursue those actions because that's what their character would do, not because some unknown, unseen force is making them do it. That unknown, unseen force is usually the writer. A character with a high degree of agency doesn't just affect the plot, they affect the plot in a way that reflects their goals and motivations. Every action they take is not just to drive the plot where it needs to go, but instead to work towards the underlying thing that is motivating that character. If you change the goal of a character with agency, they will likely take different actions, unless the new goal can be achieved through the same set of actions, and in which case the actions wouldn't. But I think you know what I mean. I think. So there's a nice, tidy definition. Character agency means that that character's actions have an impact on the plot, that they are choosing to take those actions themselves, and that those actions are in line with that character's goals and motivations. Now let's talk about what happens when characters lack agency. It's difficult to pin down a lack of character agency on its own as a problem. Because character agency is so closely related to other important parts of writing a good character, when a character lacks agency, it usually just means they are poorly written to begin with. What this means is if you've written a character that doesn't have clearly defined goals or motivations, or otherwise is just lacking development, then they're probably likely going to have problems with agency as well. Without any character behind the character, the only thing that is going to be driving their actions are the needs of the plot. And as we just talked about, that leads to problems and characters that lack agency. Now, not having agency isn't always a problem. In fact, sometimes it's the central focus of the narrative. Agency is very closely tied to proactivity, and there are a lot of great stories out there about characters becoming more proactive. The monomyth hero's journey, whatever you want to call it, has an early section demonstrating the hero's lack of proactivity. Characters overcoming their own self-doubt and inner lack of confidence is a central aspect in a lot of stories. Usually these types of narratives represent characters overcoming internal conflicts that are preventing them from being proactive and thus having agency. But you can just as easily have external conflicts that limit a character's agency, albeit in a different way. They might be physically imprisoned, they could be part of a marginalized group in society weighed down by cultural norms and prejudices, or there could be like a zombie apocalypse or an alien invasion that's preventing them from having agency. Whatever the external cause is, normally the narrative centers around the character overcoming the external oppressing forces. Which brings up an interesting point. Characters working to overcome something that is preventing them from having agency is itself a demonstration of their agency. In the case of internal conflict, usually we know that the character deep down wants to overcome those things, or we, the audience, see that they need to overcome those things. This is normally the character's own decision, sometimes with a bit of a push from a mentor figure or someone else to make a change and overcome this conflict. In the case of external conflict, seeing a character actively working to improve their situation and fighting against forces that are more powerful than them is going to be a more engaging story. Characters who lack agency don't do either of those things. They don't fight, they don't take action, whether the problem is internal or external. The fact that they just sit around and do nothing, or just do things because the plot needs them to happen, makes these characters less interesting. Now, normally in these situations, there's a plot that still needs to happen. There will usually still be lots of exciting things going on, but none of those things will be driven by the character. The one caveat here is that at the beginning of a story, it's normal for the hero or protagonist to not be very proactive until something, usually the inciting incident, shocks them into action. Given the near ubiquity of the hero's journey, I would say nearly every protagonist starts that way. But they don't stay that way. That's the important part. Ultimately, it comes down to this. If the protagonist isn't doing protagonistic things, then why are they the protagonist? So if you want to know if your characters have solid agency, ask yourself the following. Are we watching the right character, or is there someone else whose actions are doing more to drive the plot? What's driving the character's choices? Are they pursuing actions that align with their motivations or goals? If I switched out another character with a different goal, would they take the same actions? Or conversely, if you threw that character into another story with a different set of problems, would that other story play out the same way? Are there internal or external conflicts the character is ignoring or not otherwise dealing with? Is the character working to overcome these things, or are they just letting themselves get pushed around? Is there a point in the story where their attitude changes? Is there any more content for this video, or have we reached the end of it? I'll answer that last one. We have reached the end of it. There's a lot more that I could talk about on this topic, but I feel like this video has already gotten way too long as it is. We've mostly been talking about character agency when it comes to protagonists or main characters, the hero characters, but it's also an important issue when it comes to side characters, which I haven't talked about yet. Maybe we'll talk about that in the future. Anyway, that's enough for now. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can be proactive and check out the rest of my writing advice videos and subscribe to my channel. I post new writing advice videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I don't know why I did that random look to the left there. There's nothing over there. Well, there's stuff over there, but I don't know why I looked at it. I don't know why I'm looking at it now. I should be looking at the camera.